Where do you think the most beautiful women in Europe are? Russia, Ukraine, or the romantic streets of Paris and Rome, places where beauty has been carefully packaged into postcards, movies, and daydreams? If those names came to your mind first, then there's a good chance you've already overlooked a country sitting quietly in the heart of Europe, one you were never really taught to see. There is a place that rarely appears on glossy lists or luxury travel guides. It isn't marketed with Eiffel Towers, ancient colosseums, or grand boulevards. A country with one of the lowest average incomes in Europe, so low that many people assume it simply isn't worth dreaming about. And because of that assumption, it has almost vanished from the global imagination. What's strange is that millions willingly crowd into Paris, line up in Rome, and cross half the continent chasing a familiar idea of beauty, while another country, quieter, rougher, and far more honest, remains invisible. Not because it lacks beauty, but because it never learned how to advertise it. Albania doesn't invite you with big promises. It doesn't sell a perfect fantasy. It simply exists quietly and modestly, carrying people, architecture, and a rhythm of life that much of Europe lost long ago. So maybe the real question isn't, is Albania beautiful? But rather, why were you never taught to look for it? Albania on Europe's silent map. Albania is not far from Paris, Rome, or Vienna. On a map, it sits only a short flight away from some of Europe's most celebrated capitals. Yet in the imagination of travelers, it feels strangely distant, as if it exists outside the usual routes, outside the stories people are told about Europe. It is close in geography, but far in attention. This is a small country, but its past is heavy. Every valley, every coastline, every city carries layers of history that most visitors never stop to notice. Empires passed through here, borders shifted, and identities were shaped in silence rather than spectacle. Albania did not grow by being seen. It survived by staying closed, protected, and overlooked for far too long. For decades, isolation slowed everything. Ideas arrived late. Investment arrived late. Tourism arrived late. While the rest of Europe was learning how to sell itself to the world, Albania was learning how to endure on its own. That delay still shapes how the country feels today, slightly out of step with the rest of the continent, moving at a different rhythm. And this is the part many people misunderstand. Albania is not Europe's poorest country. It is Europe's late arrival, a place that opened its doors long after others had already defined the rules. And perhaps that is why it still feels so unfamiliar, so quiet, and so untouched, like a chapter of Europe that was never fully read, only skipped over. 2. The people of Albania. Beauty without display. In Albania, beauty does not step forward demanding to be noticed. It doesn't speak loudly, it doesn't rush, and it doesn't try to capture attention. You sense it more slowly in posture, in the eyes, in the way a woman walks past you without needing to look back. Here, beauty is not performed. It simply exists. Albanian women do not need to say much. They carry a distinctly Balkan composure, reserved, measured, and quietly self-contained. Their gaze rarely lingers, but when it does, it feels thoughtful rather than curious. It is the kind of look shaped by generations, raised in a society where silence was once a form of survival and observation mattered more than expression. There is a clear contrast you begin to notice. On the outside, their presence often feels strong, grounded, almost sculpted by mountains, cold winds, and a long, demanding history. Yet beneath that exterior is a softer nature, calm, restrained, and inward. They do not seek validation. Their confidence shows itself not through grand gestures, but through the ease with which they move through the world. Even the way they walk tells a story. There is no urgency, no need to dominate space, no desire to be seen. Each step follows an unhurried rhythm, as if they know exactly where they belong and feel no pressure to be anywhere else. In a world growing louder by the day, where beauty is often turned into something to be consumed quickly, Albanian women preserve a rare sense of quiet. And perhaps that quiet is what stays with you the longest. Not something that demands your attention, but something that gently holds it. Because in Albania, beauty does not ask to be admired. It simply waits close enough to be seen and subtle enough that you must learn how to truly look. 3. Tirana, a city still searching for its identity. Tirana is not ancient like Rome, where every stone tells a story that has been repeated for thousands of years. It is not glamorous like Athens either, with its beauty clearly presented for visitors to admire and photograph. Tirana is different. It does not present itself as a destination. It feels more like a place still learning how to become a city. Walking through Tirana, you won't find a polished urban plan or a clearly defined vision. Streets curve according to habit rather than design. Old and new buildings stand side by side without asking permission from one another. Everything feels in motion, experimenting changes sometimes awkwardly, sometimes with unexpected charm. Yet within that unfinished feeling, everyday life reveals itself honestly. Small balconies overflow with plants, flowers hanging between concrete floors, as if residents are creating their own breathing space. At street level, small cafes appear on nearly every corner. Nothing fancy, nothing elaborate. Just a few chairs, low tables, and conversations that last longer than intended. Tirana is not a city that overwhelms you at first glance. It asks for time. Time to observe how people live within tight spaces that still feel warm. Time to realize that the disorder here is not chaos, but a sign of a city growing day by day in its own way. And perhaps that is Tirana's identity, for now a city in transition. Not perfect, not polished, but alive. A place that does not try to impress, only patiently discovering who it is within a Europe already filled with finished images. 4. Housing. How Albanians really live. Most housing in Albania is not made up of high-rise towers or gated residential complexes. Instead, you'll find low apartment buildings, usually 4 or 5 stories tall, spread throughout neighborhoods. On the ground floor, people run small grocery shops, repair services, cafes, or family-owned businesses. Daily life and commerce are not separated here, they overlap naturally. Families live close to one another, sometimes divided by nothing more than thin walls. There isn't much private space, but there is a strong sense of connection. It's difficult to live completely isolated. Voices from the neighboring balcony, the smell of food from the apartment below, or children playing in a shared courtyard all become part of everyday life. Because personal space is limited, society feels closer. Balconies are not just for drying clothes or growing plants. They are places to pause, lean on the railing, exchange a few words with a neighbor, share news, or simply watch the familiar street below. These small, repeated interactions quietly weave people together. Living spaces in Albania reflect a deeply communal way of thinking. People are used to sharing space, sound, and presence. Life here is not designed for isolation, but for coexistence. And in a world where people are increasingly sealed behind private doors, the Albanian way of living close to one another feels refreshingly real, simple, sometimes inconvenient, but undeniably human. 5. Money. Costs. The quiet pressure. In Albania, money is not loud. It doesn't disappear in a sudden shock, but slowly and steadily, so gently that many people only notice when it is nearly gone. Wages here are low, that much is widely known. What is spoken about less is the feeling of living with money that is always passing through, rarely staying long enough to create a sense of security. Eating out is not an everyday habit for most people. Not because they don't enjoy it, but because every meal outside comes with quiet calculation. People do the math silently. A dinner is never just food. It is a decision about whether there will be anything left at the end of the month. And so the kitchen becomes the true center of daily life. Cooking at home is not only about saving money, it is part of the rhythm of living. Large meals prepared once eaten over time. The smell of food drifting into hallways, onto balconies, down stairwells, a familiar sign of life continuing. In Albania, money is rarely spent on convenience. It is spent on stability. There is a saying that fits this place well in Albania: you are not poor because you lack money, but because money finds it hard to stay. It moves through people's hands to cover necessities, then moves on. It rarely accumulates. It rarely creates a safety buffer. And so the pressure does not explode, it lingers. It lives in small, daily choices, in learned restraint, and in the quiet way people adapt to living with just enough. 6. Architecture. A history that was never erased. In Albania, history is not cleaned up to look neat. It is not hidden away, nor completely replaced by glass and steel. Instead, it stays. It lives alongside the present. As you walk down a single street, you can feel different eras layered on top of one another, out of order, unscripted, and unmistakably real. Ottoman traces remain in low rooftops, heavy enclosed structures, and small inner courtyards tucked behind walls. They carry a sense of protection and restraint, shaped by a society that once survived by staying inward and guarded. Then comes the communist era, leaving behind stark concrete blocks, rigid, functional, emotionless. Buildings designed to endure, not to be admired. After that, the Italian influence appears lighter and more open, bringing balconies, larger windows, and an attempt to let light return to urban life. What's striking is that none of these layers were erased. They stand side by side. They overlap. They accept one another's presence even when the result is far from perfect. Walls are repainted in bright colors not to beautify the past, but to continue living within it. Balconies stack upon balconies, each one different, each telling its own quiet story. There is no strict harmony, no carefully calculated aesthetic. Yet this patchwork creates something deeply human. Albania does not try to become modern by forgetting what came before. It chooses to live with it. To accept the cracks, the overlaps, the visual contradictions. And in that imperfection, architecture becomes more than structure. It becomes memory. Memory that is still in use every day, not locked inside a museum, but woven into ordinary life. 7. Public spaces. Beauty that missed its rhythm. Skanderbeg Square is wide, very wide. Wide enough to be the heart of Tirana. Wide enough to hold meetings, long evenings, and moments of shared life. Yet when you stand in the middle of it, what you feel most clearly is emptiness. Not architectural emptiness, but a lack of energy. The space is open, clean, and modern. The stone surface stretches outward. The sky feels lower without buildings closing it in. But people pass through quickly. Few stop. Fewer stay. The square feels more like a place to cross than a place to inhabit. Beauty is present, but life has not fully arrived. This does not come from a lack of money. Skanderbeg Square is not poor. It has been invested in, carefully designed, thoughtfully maintained. What is missing is an idea of how people are meant to live together in that space once the photographs are taken. What's missing are reasons to linger. A square needs more than size. It needs small, repeated activities, music, light, places to sit, corners that invite conversation. Here, everything is still waiting to be filled, not with concrete or funding, but with a shared vision of everyday life. And in that way, Skanderbeg Square becomes a quiet symbol of Tirana today. Beautiful, full of potential, but not yet connected to its true rhythm. Not outdated, just out of sync, waiting for someone to set the pace. 8. The young generation and dreams beyond the border. For many young Albanians, the road ahead does not end at the country's borders. After graduation, a large number leave. Germany is often the most mentioned destination, not because it represents a perfect dream, but because it offers opportunity and stability that home cannot yet provide. Leaving is not dramatic or loud. It happens quietly as a practical choice. The money they earn abroad is not just for themselves. It flows back to Albania through regular remittances, supporting families, repairing old homes, and helping parents live with less strain. The money does not stay where they work. It returns to where they belong. In this way, leaving is not purely a loss, it becomes a continuation. What is striking is that the dream is rarely to stay away forever. Many young Albanians do not leave to cut ties. They leave to prepare for a future return with more options, more experience, and stronger footing. Home remains present, waiting. That is why Albania has not truly lost its young generation. It has simply sent them ahead, sent them into the world to learn how to stand on their own, to accumulate knowledge and resources, and to bring back what a late-arriving country deeply needs. And in that quiet waiting, Albania continues not as a place abandoned, but as a place remembered from afar. 9. The sea. A quiet advantage. Albania's sea does not call to you with loud music or rows of crowded resorts. It doesn't push itself into travel feeds or appear endlessly in perfectly color-graded images. The coastline here is quiet, much like the country itself, never needing attention to prove its value. Along the Albanian Riviera, you won't find massive resorts blocking the horizon. Instead, there are open beaches and small coastal towns where homes still face the sea as they have for generations. Waves roll in gently, space feels open, and time seems to slow by a single beat. Here, the sea is not designed to be consumed quickly, but to be lived with. Albania's beaches are not overly Instagrammable. The blue is still there, the water still clear, but there are no staged viewpoints or packaged experiences. You step into the water on your own, find your own place to sit, listen to the wind and the waves. And that is what makes the experience more personal, less performative. This sea is not for the rushed. It does not promise constant excitement or offer moments meant only for check-ins. It is for those who want quiet, who want to sit a little longer, who are willing to let an afternoon pass without needing to do anything at all. And in a Europe that grows louder and more crowded each year, this quiet advantage is becoming increasingly rare. 10. Religion. A rare sense of ease. Religion in Albania exists in a very gentle way. You see churches, you see mosques, you hear the call to prayer at familiar moments. But it does not dominate daily life, nor does it dictate how people must live or who they must be. Here, faith lives alongside everyday life, not above it. Most Albanians identify as Muslim, but it is a moderate, flexible form of Islam, shaped more by culture than strict doctrine. Rigid rules rarely appear in daily routines. People believe in their own way, keeping what feels meaningful and letting go of what no longer fits a modern rhythm. This sense of ease did not happen by accident. It was shaped by a long history in which religion was pushed out of public life for decades. When faith returned, it came back softer, quieter, and less demanding. It does not compete for power, or does it insist on absolute obedience. Because of this, Albania is not a society driven by doctrine. It is a society that believes in life itself, in coexistence, shared space, and the freedom for each person to find meaning on their own. In a world growing increasingly polarized, this rare calm feels quietly valuable. 11. Nature. Nothing to prove. Nature in Albania does not try to impress. It is not built to be conquered, and it does not ask you to go higher, travel farther, or leave your mark behind. It simply exists vast, quiet, and deep enough to make you slow down and reset your own rhythm. In the north, the Albanian Alps rise sharply raw and untouched. The mountains are not softened or made tourist-friendly. Rock forest, mist, and wind remain exactly as they are. Standing there, you don't feel victorious, you feel smaller, as if the noise you carried from everyday life has nowhere left to cling. In the south, the Riviera opens into a different world. Blue seas, open skies, and endless light. Yet even here, nature does not rush you. It asks nothing but presence, sitting still as the water changes color, with the hours listening to waves that move for no one. Time is not filled with activity, it is allowed to pass. Then there are the wild rivers cutting through valleys and forests, unblocked and undirected. Water follows the land, the seasons, its own quiet logic. Here you are no longer the center. You are only a small part of a movement that began long before you arrived. Albania's nature is not here to be conquered. It is here to remind you how to slow down, to reset your breathing, your steps, and your thoughts. And in a world constantly pushing for more speed and more intensity, this unproven, unperformative presence becomes a rare invitation to pause and live at your own pace. 12. Gjirokastër. The city of stone and memory, Gjirokastër does not welcome you with noise. It does the opposite. It slows you down from the very first step. Stone is everywhere. Stone beneath your feet, stone on the rooftops, stone in the gray walls that have stood for centuries. Everything feels heavy, grounded, and quiet, as if time here does not move forward, but settles. The steep, narrow stone streets force you to walk slowly, not because they are difficult, but because rushing feels impossible. Each footstep echoes clearly in the stillness, reminding you that you are passing through a place that has witnessed many generations living, leaving, and being remembered in the quietest way. Gjirokastër does not tell stories out loud. It lets stone and shadow speak instead. Here, silence is not empty. It is full of sensation. Wind moves through layered stone roofs, carrying cool air and the scent of damp moss. As evening approaches, light softens the rough walls, washing them in pale gold. In that moment, thoughts of schedules, plans, and destinations begin to fade. Gjirokastër is not a place to live fast. It does not suit urgency or instant decisions. It is a place to think slowly, to reflect, to feel how people once belonged to landstone and a sense of time longer than a single lifetime. And when you leave, what remains is not an image but a feeling that some places exist not to be consumed, but to be remembered in silence. Albania is not paradise. It does not promise wealth. It does not promise ease or comfort. Life here still comes with real limitations, delays, and everyday challenges. But Albania is for those who have grown tired of the noise of places that have become too perfect. Cities polished until there is no room left for chance. Destinations where every emotion is prepackaged, every experience priced, timed, and directed. In Albania, you are not treated like a customer. You live as a regular human being, slower, closer to others, and less pressured. This way of life is not for everyone. But for some, that very imperfection brings a rare sense of relief. And perhaps the final question is not whether Albania is a good place or not. It is this: if you had to choose between convenience and the feeling of truly living, which would you choose?